Millionaire mocked a waitress in French, but when she spoke, the incredible truth was revealed. Claire stood behind the counter of Rosie's diner, her heart pooling with a mix of determination and doubt as she wiped down the counter. Her mind raced with the weight of her responsibilities. Bills piled high at home, her mother's tired face flickering in her thoughts, and her younger siblings relying on her. She smiled at the customer in front of her, a perfect mask to hide the turmoil beneath. Just then the doors swung open, and in walked Victor. The rich businessman, suit pristine, briefcase in hand, radiated an air of superiority that made the chatter in the diner falter. Claire caught his eye as he scanned the menu, and a smirk twisted his lips when he saw her. "Pauvre petite," he muttered in French, the words dripping with mockery. Laughter erupted around the diner, tension rising, observers bitterly aware that they identified with Claire's struggle. Her pulse quickened, Claire's skin prickled, the weight of his disdain clawing at her. Feeling the laughter's strange heat wash over her, she paused, absorbing the ridicule. It wasn't just a petty jab, it was a cruel reminder of how the world's perception often dismissed those like her. But beneath the surface, her pride flared. She was more than just a waitress from a small town. A quick breath, and she straightened her shoulders. With practiced calm, she faced him. "Excuse me, but you might want to reconsider your words." Her voice was steady, her French flawless, like an armor against his taunts. The diner fell silent. Even Victor seemed taken aback. She continued, "You might be surprised how much we all accomplish, even if our titles mean little to you." The thrill of her response sent a ripple of energy through the diners, sparking admiration and hope. But inside, uncertainty clawed at her. Could she really compete against someone like Victor? The cooking competition she had dreamt of for years suddenly loomed before her, enticing and intimidating, roiling with anxiety over the risks of facing someone so accustomed to winning. What if she was just a waitress in the end? Could her skills even match his privileged background? Each question twisted her gut. Was she pushing for something that could lead to ultimate embarrassment? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. She buried those fears deep, fueling herself instead with the love for her family, each of their faces flashing in her thoughts. They relied on her. Couldn't she do this? The moment was fleeting, but urgency washed over her. As the competition neared, Victor's mocking smirk felt eclipsed by her resolve. The support of her diner regulars surged. But then a jarring revelation from her mother one evening shattered her newfound strength. Secrets about their family's history entwined with the very industry she wished to conquer. What if her family's past was the key to unlocking her talent? Thoughts whirled, mixing certainty with dread. Could she trust this knowledge, or had it just opened a Pandora's box that could ruin everything? Claire wrestled with that dissonance, feeling the stakes heightening. Just as she found herself standing at the precipice of her dreams, the walls around her felt tighter. And there was Victor's smirk etched in her brain. Would it truly become a representation of an unforgettable battle? The competition bore down on her, looming larger than life. The crowd beneath them waiting in breathless anticipation. Which truth would prevail in the end? As she braced herself to compete, the tension peaked, leaving Claire standing at a formidable crossroads, where every choice could either make her soar or send her spiraling. The days slipped by like grains of sand. each one adding to Claire's mounting apprehension. She could almost taste the bitterness of self-doubt each time she walked the floor of Rosie's diner, serving mundane orders, pretending that she belonged among the culinary elite. Yet inside, the fire she ignited with her response to Victor crackled insistently, raw yet potent, urging her to embrace the destiny she had long denied. Determined to harness this newfound resolve, Claire pored over culinary books in her scarce free time, driven by memories of her mother's laughter in the kitchen, the aroma of spices mingling in the air. Each recipe served as a reminder that her past could guide her, a stark contrast to the haunting question of inadequacy that appeared more frequently in her thoughts. Could the forgotten legacy of her family's culinary art breathe life into her ambitions? An unexpected burst of inspiration struck one evening as she worked late at the diner. A sense of urgency propelled her to experiment with the dishes she served, an instinct arising from somewhere deep within her. During a slow period, she decided to turn a simple daily special into something remarkable, fusing influences and flavors she had grown up with. As she carefully plated her creation, the faces of her family flashed before her, igniting them one by one in her mind. An anchor, a gentle reminder of why she had to succeed. That evening, her experimental dish drew the attention of a few discerning customers, their delighted reactions igniting a spark she began to recognize as passion. For the first time in a long while, she felt connected to her purpose. Perhaps she was no longer merely a waitress. She was a creator, navigating the crossroads of tradition and innovation. Yet even as the courage surged within her, Victor's doubt lingered like a cloud. The looming competition's date intensified. Hadn't he built a career on the very essence of what she was seeking to claim? The clanging of the diner's bell abruptly interrupted her thoughts, heralding the arrival of Victor yet again. This time, however, she stood resolute, armed with determination and the taste of triumph from her culinary experiment. He strode in, his gait unyielding, confidence radiating off him like heat waves. Spotting Claire, his usual smirk returned, but this time she refused to let it dim her conviction. "Ah, the chef behind the counter," he remarked, his voice oozing disdain as he surveyed the diner. "What will you offer us today? A sample of your culinary genius?" While derision dripped from his words, she wasn't the same girl he ridiculed before. With measured poise, she replied, "Perhaps you should try it for yourself. I believe in the quality of my work." She gestured toward her latest creation, feeling both open and vulnerable. "It may surprise you. It might even change your perspective." Victor raised an eyebrow, doubt flickering across his face, but curiosity momentarily replaced his mockery. He leaned in slightly, his posture shifting, a challenge. "All right, I'm intrigued. Show me what you've got then." A rush of adrenaline surged within her. This was her moment, not just to display her culinary skills, but to assert her place in the face of adversity. The taste of defiance drove her forward as she carefully plated a serving of her dish, deliberately showcasing not only flavors but stories interwoven through her family lineage with each ingredient. Amid the hustle of the diner, a distinct thrill enveloped her as she approached him. Would this moment shatter the facade of superiority he wore so proudly? Could this be the pivot point where she began to reclaim her narrative, piece by piece? As she set the dish down in front of him, anticipation bubbled in her chest, daring to breach the divide between mockery and acknowledgement, success and failure, her dreams and his disdain. The fork lingered in his hand as he prepared to taste the embodiment of her struggle. But just as he took the first bite, her heart raced, not out of fear, but hope. The truth was about to unfold. Would this small plate bear the weight of her aspirations? And as she held her breath, one thought crystallized. Claire was no longer just a reluctant participant in the game. She was ready to reshape it entirely. The intensity of the moment swirled around Claire as she watched Victor's expression transform. His initial skepticism had given way to a focused contemplation, a flicker of surprise breaking through his otherwise composed demeanor. Claire leaned forward, every nerve ending alive with anticipation, fully aware that this could be a defining moment in her journey. Victor chewed slowly, a furrow creeping into his brow. Each second stretched out like an eternity, the din of the diner fading into a muted backdrop of non-existence. She was acutely aware of her breathing, steadying herself against the tide of vulnerability that threatened to overwhelm her. What did it feel like to stand at the edge of discovery, the threshold of acceptance? Finally, he swallowed, and Claire's pulse quickened. "Interesting," he murmured, his voice laced with unexpected respect. "The flavors are bold. You've paired them well." He paused, weighing his next words with an unusual gravity. "But boldness isn't everything in this industry. It's how you present that boldness that counts." His comment sliced through her initial elation, dragging her back into the realm of uncertainty. Was he implying that her execution fell short? Did her food truly resonate beyond the moment of first taste, or was she still battling a phantom wall of doubt? "I appreciate your feedback," Claire managed, striving to keep her voice steady, yet knowing her composure was still a delicate construction. "In this dish, I intended to reflect my roots, the stories behind each flavor." The words came tumbling forth, resonating with sincerity. "This is just a glimpse of where I'm from, not merely a meal to serve." Victor's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Claire sensed his irritation rise. "Don't confuse nostalgia with ambition, Claire. The culinary world values innovation, not emotional attachment," he retorted, his voice laced with the authority of his experience. But a new determination blazed within her, igniting a fierce defense of her passion. "What drives innovation if not the past?" she challenged, her heart pounding. "Every chef has a story, and mine fuels my creativity. Isn't that what culinary art is about?" A brief silence followed, hard-edged and tense, but she refused to back down. This was not merely about a dish anymore. It was entwined with her sense of identity, the very fabric of her aspirations. She felt the urgency to reveal more of herself if she was ever to gain genuine respect. Victor seemed taken aback, something akin to respect flickering again in his expression. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated that she could confront him so directly. Before he could respond, the bell over the door jangled again, signaling a wave of new customers. They needed help, and she found herself instinctively slipping into action mode. "Let me know what you think when you've had a moment," she said, redirecting her energy toward the tasks at hand. Each order that went out was now imbued with a sense of mission. She had something to prove, not only to Victor, but to herself. As the evening progressed, each interaction with customers was rejuvenated by a newly discovered confidence. Claire navigated the pressures of the kitchen with a renewed sense of conviction, rediscovering the artistry of her craft in the chaos. The diner buzzed with life, and unexpected compliments flowed from diners who tasted her dishes. With every satisfied customer, Claire reaffirmed her purpose. It was no longer enough to simply exist in this world. She needed to carve her own niche. Each flavor she paired, each story she infused, solidified the belief that she could bridge her past with her aspirations. But as the clamor of the diner settled into a lull, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that this moment with Victor was just one stop on an arduous journey. She still had to confront the real challenge ahead, the competition that loomed on the horizon like an impending storm. And yet one thought gnawed at her. What if Victor was right? What if her emotional ties ultimately hindered her ambitions? With the competition drawing near, she would have to confront her own reflections on the culinary landscape. Oh, how she wished to step beyond the boundaries of nostalgia. A decision was fast approaching. Would Claire embrace the roots that define her, or break away to create something new? The blend of past and future was calling her name, and deep down she sensed the real battle was only beginning. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow throughout the diner, Claire found herself lost in thought while scrubbing the stainless steel countertops. The rhythm of her scrubbing matched her heartbeat, each stroke echoing the questions spinning in her mind. She had experienced a flicker of progress with Victor, but what did it truly mean? Was she simply placating a skeptic with nostalgia, or had an ember of innovation sparked in her soul? The hum of the diner began to soften, whispering the untold stories of her dishes, the memories and dreams they held. Still, she felt suspended in a moment of contemplation. What if she could perfect the balance between her roots and her ambitions? The thought was simultaneously exhilarating and daunting, as if she were standing at the edge of a diving board, peering into water that shimmered with promise but was also deceptively deep. In an act of bravery, she stepped into the kitchen drawer, pulling out her well-worn notebook. The pages were dog-eared, filled with loose sketches, flavor combinations, and ramblings. It had become a mirror of her journey, a sanctuary where she could pour her reflections without judgment. This was where her dreams and her past collided, begging for attention. Flipping through the pages, Claire's eyes settled on a recipe she had abandoned, a dish that melded her grandmother's family recipe with modern techniques. She could see the potential, a fusion that spoke to both heritage and contemporary culinary trends. A mixture of fear and excitement pulsated in her chest. The task ahead was not just to create a dish, but to effectively articulate her story through it. Victor's words echoed as she cradled the notebook. It's how you present that boldness that counts. She had been presenting herself based on what felt safe, hiding behind the known, the familiar. Transformation wouldn't come from the comfort zone. It required stepping into new territory, where vulnerability could bloom into strength. Determined, Claire made the decision. It was time to reimagine her recipe, rather than rely solely on the legacy laid before her. Innovation was not a departure from her roots, but rather an evolution of them, a way to invite them into a new narrative. Her heart raced at the prospect of executing this vision, but the looming competition remained like a specter on the periphery, reminding her of the stakes involved. She glanced at the kitchen clock, the seconds ticking away, each one pushing her closer to what had to be done. The idea of presenting her reimagined dish juxtaposed against the backdrop of the competition was both terrifying and invigorating. Could she withstand the scrutiny, bend the expectations? With newfound resolve, Claire arranged her next steps, experimenting with techniques, blending flavors, and refining presentations. With each practice round, she would gather feedback, not just dissecting praise, but also absorbing critiques. It was a risky venture. She realized she was not just crafting a dish, but redefining her culinary identity in a world that often prioritized superficiality over sincerity. As she began to gather ingredients for her first trial, Claire felt the pressure of her choices pulling at her. She was on the precipice of transformation, and the uncertainty of this crossroads weighed heavily on her. Would she ultimately succeed in her ambition to merge the old with the new, or would the remnants of doubt be her downfall? Her internal struggle bubbled like a simmering pot, leaving a taste of anxiety lingering on her tongue. And just as she grounded her thoughts, the door chimed again, signaling yet another patron. Claire took a deep breath, staring her focus back toward the diner. There was a world beyond her creations, and its expectations loomed close. She suddenly felt a pull towards the unknown, realizing that the real competition was not outside, but within. Would she trust in her artistry enough to step boldly into the fray? Her journey was poised for a decisive moment, and little did she know, the most significant confrontation awaited her just around the corner. one that could shatter her ambitions or solidify her resolve. The following day dawned with a chill that seemed to seep into Claire's bones, mirroring the uncertainty that clouded her mind. As she stepped into the diner, the familiar sounds and smells washed over her, yet everything felt different. Each clang of the pots, each flip of a pancake struck her with the gravity of her choices. Today marks the beginning of her rebirth, not through mere repetition, but by claiming her own narrative. Claire arrived early, the sunlight filtering through the window, illuminating the dust motes that danced lazily in the air. She placed her notebook on the countertop, fingers hovering above its pages as if her very essence awaited permission to spill forth. It was now or never. Her ambitions begged to be explored. The whispers of her past collided with the urgency of her present. She needed to transform that abandoned recipe into a vibrant dish that embodied her duality. After gathering her ingredients, Claire closed her eyes, taking in a deep breath. She envisioned her grandmother standing beside her, guiding her through each step. A touch of nostalgia grounded her. But nostalgia alone wouldn't propel her forward. She needed innovation. She began with the family recipe, meticulously detailing each ingredient, allowing the spirit of tradition to intertwine with her own identity. As she chopped vegetables with precision, Claire contemplated her evolving style. Her confidence began to crystallize with each cut. She recognized the shift from passive recollection to active creation. Yet, as she sautéed the ingredients, doubts began to creep in. What if her desire to innovate came at the cost of authenticity? The flames danced in the skillet, flickering wildly, mirroring her stirred feelings. To suppress the doubt, Claire thrust herself deeper into her work. She started to finesse the details, adding modern flavors, adjusting presentations, testing new techniques. Each experiment became a canvas for her story, a palette capturing the essence of her roots. Hours passed, and the relentless rhythm of her practice merged with her heartbeat. With every iteration, she faced her past but redesigned it with intention. Claire gathered feedback from Victor and the diner's staff, welcoming their candid criticisms like a student eager to learn. Each critique, while hard to swallow, acted as a sculptor's chisel, helping to refine her voice. Amidst this storm of creativity, however, she recognized a recurring theme: fear of inadequacy. Was she clear enough in her objectives? Would her dish resonate with others or merely disorient them? That question echoed in her mind, threatening to drown out the clarity she had fought so hard to achieve. As she plated her final creation, she glanced at the dish, a celebration of both the past and the present. The dish shone with promise. She thought of the competition looming ahead, the festival where her work would be scrutinized by all. The stakes felt impossibly high, but she had committed to do this not just for accolades, but to uncover who she was meant to be as a chef. Feeling a surge of determination, she picked up her phone and texted Victor, sharing a photo of her dish accompanied by a simple caption, "Ready to unveil my story." As her phone buzzed with a response, she felt a swell of expectation. The moment had arrived to share her truth. What she hadn't anticipated was Victor's reply, a simple yet provocative question that curdled the excitement into anxiety. With that question hanging in the air like an unfinished story, Claire's pulse quickened. The awareness of the impending reactions loomed over her, each possibility intertwining with her aspiration to connect her past with the innovative chef she was becoming. Could she handle the weight of their judgment, or would her story crumble under the scrutiny? Time slipped away as she awaited Victor's appearance, and Claire knew in her heart the moment of truth was now rapidly approaching. As the door swung open, Victor stepped inside, a whirlwind of energy that cut through Claire's mounting tension. He surveyed the diner before his gaze landed on her, eyes sparkling with a mix of encouragement and curiosity. No words were exchanged immediately. The anticipation hung thick in the air like the scent of bacon sizzling on the grill. "Let's see your masterpiece, Claire," he said, breaking the silence that felt like an eternity. Her stomach churned. A part of her wanted to retreat, to keep her creation hidden away where it wouldn't be judged. But she needed to face this moment. She wanted to show him and herself what she had been building toward. With a steadiness she didn't quite feel, she plated the dish for him, carefully arranging it as if it were a personal offering. The colors leaped from the plate, a vibrant homage to her journey, yet the anxiety inside her felt like a thundering pulse. Victor's eyes narrowed as he took in the artistry before him. "Wow, you've really captured something here," he said, his voice an anchor against the storm of her doubts. Her heart swelled, but his praise felt like a double-edged sword. She needed to hear his candid review. The weight of expectation was still heavy. What if he was only being polite? What if the reaction she feared echoed in his mind too? "Thank you," Claire replied, her voice steady yet quiet. "But I want your honest feedback. No sugarcoating." Victor's expression shifted to one of determination, and she sensed the sincerity behind his words when he said, "All right then, let me dive in." With a forkful of her creation, he took his first bite. They stood in a bubble of stillness as the diner's hum faded into the background. Claire watched intently, her body rigid with anticipation that warped time itself. Victor chewed, swallowed, and closed his eyes as a new expression formed, a blend of surprise and pleasure. "This," he finally spoke, his tone shifting weight, "isn't just a dish. This tells your story. It's layered and nuanced, just like you." Claire's heartbeat quickened, but with each word, an unseen shackled weight began to lift. It felt invigorating to hear her creation acknowledged beyond flavor, recognized as a piece of her identity. "It's not just about the taste?" she probed, needing deeper validation before she could exhale the breath she was holding. Victor's smile widened. "Not at all. This isn't merely food. It's a reflection of who you are. It's about embracing your past while forging your future." The realization hit her with force. Her narrative was woven into the very act of cooking. The fears and uncertainties that had stalked her were merely part of the tapestry, defining but not confining her. Yet as his words empowered her, a shadow flickered at the corners of her mind. Would her story resonate with the audience? Victor's affirmation was a starting point, not the finale. What if she dazzled him but faltered in front of critics, or worse, friends and family? Claire leaned back, internalizing his encouragement, but the distant echo of judgment loomed. "How do I prepare for the reactions, especially if they're more challenging than I expect?" Victor placed a steady hand on her arm. "You prepare by knowing that every reaction is an opportunity, not a setback. Embrace it." As he spoke, her resolve solidified further. The road ahead would surely be strewn with challenges, yet she had begun navigating a territory that felt familiar yet new. Driven by a newfound courage, she thought about the upcoming days filled with possibilities, yet a daunting question loomed. If the world rejected her dish, would she spiral back into doubt, or would she rise as a chef reborn? As she wrestled with the uncertainty, Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted from supportive ally to serious concern. "Claire, our chat will have to pause. I just got wind of something we need to address immediately. Are you ready for a surprise that could change everything about this journey?" Victor's gaze shifted back to Claire, the urgency of his words puncturing the buoyancy she had just begun to feel. "What do you mean, a surprise?" she asked, her heart sinking beneath layers of uncertainty. She had just started believing in herself as a chef, and now it all threatened to come crashing down. "There's a big opportunity on the horizon," he explained, pulling out a flyer from his jacket pocket. The bold lettering read, "Local Chef Showcase, Unveiling New Culinary Talents." Her pulse quickened. "They're looking for chefs to compete. It's in 2 weeks," he continued, each word igniting a flicker of hope and apprehension. But the pressure, Claire's voice trailed off. Images of packed rooms filled with critics and nose-in-the-air food bloggers flashing through her mind. She had spent years in the shadows, perfecting her craft away from the spotlight. "Claire, this could be your chance to share your story with the world," Victor encouraged, tone firm but gentle. "You have to step out into the light. It starts with one dish, one moment to showcase who you are and what you can create. You can't let fear dictate your choices." His words ignited a fight within her. Yes, the thought of competition rattled her core, but so did the realization that this was the perfect test. Could she stand tall under the weight of scrutiny? She was still grappling with her worth as an artist, yet buried within her was the desire to share her culinary voice with a wider audience. "What if I fail?" she spat out, almost defensively. There was that shadow again, pushing against her semblance of newfound confidence. "What if they tear me apart?" "And what if they don't?" Victor countered, his eyes narrowing with intensity. "What if they love it? Even if critics shout, what matters most is your truth and passion. A single setback doesn't erase your story. Remember, you define your own success. You've already begun that process with me today." His unwavering faith was a lifeguard in the storm threatening to overwhelm. The realization landed softly. This challenge could be a confirmation of her journey. If she truly embraced the craft, she needed to engage with the world, not retreat from it. Claire took a deep breath, grounding herself in this moment. "All right," she finally said, steeling her resolve. "I'll do it." "Good," Victor said, a spark igniting in his eyes. "But it's going to take more than just showing up. We need to refine your dish and amplify your story. You must tap into every stitch of your narrative." They were no longer two figures in a cramped diner. They were creators standing on the edge of possibility, blood pumping with shared ambition. She could visualize her dish, more than just a meal, a vibrant tableau representing her history woven with ambition. "What do I need to do?" she asked, adrenaline flooding her system, scrambling her thoughts. There was an urgency now, an invincible drive to seize this chance. "First, you need to prepare your dish, not just make it better, but understand it. Delve into what makes it authentic," he explained. "Then we'll work on your presentation. The dish isn't the only thing that needs to resonate. You too. Your story, the why, the how, the what led you here is essential." The purpose illuminated something deep within her. She felt a burgeoning excitement that submerged her fear in a tide of determination. As they delved into plans and techniques, footsteps in the diner faded into a distant murmur. But deep within, an unsettling thought surfaced. How would she navigate the responses from people who might not support her journey? The weight of judgment still loomed large, a hurdle she hadn't yet tackled. But for now, she pushed it aside. Claire needed to practice facing those fears head-on, starting with a dish that embodied everything she was. "How do you feel about jumping into this process immediately?" Victor asked, breaking her reverie. She nodded firmly, the flicker of doubt still nagging but retreating in the face of action. Suddenly, the diner door swung open, and a group of familiar faces stepped inside, laughter dissipating Claire's concentration. She recognized them from her past, the crew of colleagues who had watched her every misstep. Her heart raced as the recognition settled like a weight in her stomach. This would be her moment of confrontation, no longer hidden in the shadows. But she couldn't let fear overcome her now. "Looks like we're about to get another test," Victor murmured, glancing toward the doorway and sensing her tension. How would she react when her past scrutinized her future? Before she could answer, the weight of the moment ignited a challenge she never anticipated. This was not just about cooking, it was about facing herself again. But facing them meant discovering even more than just her culinary narrative. It would uncover layers of resilience she never knew were waiting to be tapped. Could she turn judgment into fuel? The answer tangled with her ambition, and as the laughter echoed toward her, outside forces were about to collide with the very essence of who she was becoming. Claire inhaled deeply, her senses sharpening. The familiar faces stirred a storm of memories, the laughter, the behind-the-back whispers, the moments of inadequacy that had haunted her career like a shadow. Each face carried stories of shared kitchen disasters and personal triumphs, yet now they symbolized something greater, a reminder of her reasons for stepping into the spotlight. She flicked her gaze back to Victor, whose confidence fueled her resolve. "What do I even say to them?" she whispered, a new anxiety creeping in. "What if they ask about my absence from the culinary scene? It's not exactly a glowing history." "Don't hide from your story, share it," Victor encouraged. "Every artist has their journey, and yours is uniquely yours. You're not just emerging, you're reclaiming your narrative. Embrace it." His words struck a chord, awakening a ferocity within her. Perhaps it was time to stop avoiding the very past that shaped her. Maybe they deserved to hear why she had retreated from the competition-driven world for so long. The group made their way to a booth, laughter punctuating their conversation like sharp knives. As they settled in, Claire's heart raced, not with fear, but with the sudden urgency to confront the self-doubt that had clung to her for years. "You define your own success," she reminded herself. This was more than a casual encounter, it was an opportunity wrapped in tension. She had a chance to showcase her evolution, to present who she was becoming, culinary artist or not. "What will you be cooking for the showcase?" one of her former colleagues, Jenna, called out, amusement dancing behind her eyes, a hint of curiosity laced with challenge. "Out of the shadows now, are we?" someone else chimed, their laughter echoing like a taunt. The sting of their words lingered, but it only fueled her resolve. She lifted her chin slightly, her pulse steadying as she crafted her response in her mind. "Actually, I am taking part in the showcase." She forced confidence into her tone, her stomach churning with the thrill of the revelation. "I'll be making a dish that tells my story, a mix of nostalgia and fresh perspectives." The table quieted, surprise etched on their faces. Claire felt the shift. In that moment, their judgment had transformed into fascination. "Really?" Jenna's tone was more intrigued now. "That's brave." "Brave isn't the word I'd use," Claire admitted, a small smile pulling at the corners of her lips. "It's necessary. I've taken the time to rediscover myself, my flavors." The weight of her past felt lighter as she spoke. She continued, her voice gaining momentum. "Cooking has always been more than a job for me. It's my language. It represents every lesson, failure, and triumph. I wouldn't just present a dish, I would serve my journey." A palpable shift took place in the booth. The laughter faded, replaced by an unguarded interest. As she spoke, it dawned on her, the power of vulnerability was its own strength. Reclaiming her narrative ignited a fire within her she had almost quelled. "Like a phoenix?" one of them quipped, grinning. "More like a chef who finally found her zest," Claire shot back, laughter bubbling within her at the crafted metaphor. It was in that moment she realized their expectations didn't define her. Her willingness to rise above their judgment and reclaim her space was what truly mattered. Victor watched from the sidelines, pride dancing in his eyes. This was the breakthrough he had believed she would achieve. The final moments of idle conversation dissolved as encouragement filled the void. Anna and Jack, two of her former colleagues, chimed in to ask questions about her dish. They wanted to learn from her, to engage with her new path, their skepticism melting away as they focused on the woman she had become. As they discussed ingredients, techniques, and ideas, excitement coursed through Claire, her fears transforming into strategies for success. She slipped effortlessly into her passion, the past serving as a strengthening cloak rather than an anchor. Each moment fortified her resolve. every answer making the uncharted future shimmer with possibility. Claire had a tantalizing vision, a dish that would be bold and layered, vibrant flavors reflecting her journey. The idea of presenting her culinary voice in front of critics morphed from dread into a challenge she could savor. But even as she began to imagine whipping up the dish, a nagging thought remained in the back of her mind. Would the resurgence of past acquaintances steer her towards unshakable confidence, or lead her back into the shadows she had worked so hard to escape? "Once you get your dish perfected, we need to work on your pitch," Victor interjected, bringing her back to the moment. "Presenting your dish is only half of what you'll show the judges. It's all about how you convey your story." With newfound determination, Claire agreed, absorbing Victor's guidance as she navigated through the conversations. There was much work to be done, and the time was dwindling, but she felt ready. Still, as the evening progressed, the slight prickle of doubt hovered on her periphery. Could she truly live up to the expectations she was creating? With every layer of assurance built tonight, she understood now that the pathway to her destiny was embroidered with both affirmation and fear, woven into the very fabric of who she was destined to become. And as Claire stood on the cusp of returning to the kitchen, the looming showcase no longer felt like a burden, but an exhilarating leap into unknown territories. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had only just begun. What new truths lay waiting to be uncovered in the heat of the kitchen, under the gaze of critics and peers alike, that would reshape her narrative once again? The next few days felt like a whirlwind, each moment tinged with an exhilarating blend of anticipation and trepidation. Claire immersed herself in the preparations for the showcase, her kitchen transforming into a sanctuary. It was her sanctuary, a realm where she could experiment with flavors, textures, and memories, piecing together her identity not only as a cook but as an artist. She found herself gravitating toward old recipes that had once filled her childhood home with warmth. But she also wanted to break free from tradition, to infuse those classics with her personal twist. The tension of merging the past with her present ignited her creative spark. However, with every layer she crafted, doubts occasionally pierced through the excitement. As she built her dish, a shadow of concern lingered. Was her vision enough? Would the judges appreciate her culinary narrative, or would they see it as mere nostalgia? Victor watched her closely, his support unwavering. "Clear your mind and focus on your flavors," he advised one evening, his voice steady like an anchor. "Trust that your experience, your struggles, and your uniqueness will resonate. Don't overthink, let it flow organically." Claire nodded, attempting to banish her worries. Yet as the days drew nearer to the showcase, the weight of her ambitions felt heavier. In her restless hours, she began to jot down thoughts in a journal that had long been neglected. It became a space for reflection, lessons learned, mistakes made, and joys found. Writing gave her clarity, revealing hidden competencies she hadn't fully acknowledged until now. "Cooking is a conversation," she wrote one evening, the words flowing like the sauce she planned to drizzle over her dish. "It's not just about taste. It's about connection, memory, and celebration. I want to spark conversations at the showcase." Writing lit a small fire within her, and slowly it flickered brighter. Claire realized she was not merely presenting food. She was inviting people to partake in her journey, share in her experience. This newfound understanding propelled her to practice her pitch, honing not just the words, but the emotion behind them. She wanted each aspect of her presentation to echo her journey. Yet, as she practiced in front of the mirror, her stomach knotted at the thought of critical spectators. Would her vulnerability shine through, or would their skepticism pull her into familiar darkness? On a particularly tense night, Claire sat on her kitchen floor, surrounded by pots and pans. She closed her eyes, letting the aromatic memories wash over her,
a burnt pie from childhood, the aroma of spices filling the air during family gatherings, her mother's encouraging voice in whispered encouragement. It all grounded her, grounding her in the truth of her journey. "You have a voice," she whispered to herself, the weight of each word settling into her bones. "And it's time to use it." The day of the showcase arrived, and despite her earlier confidence, anxiety gripped her again. This time, as she stepped into the venue, the vast space sparked a chaotic energy within her. The atmosphere buzzed with chatter, laughter, and the clinking of utensils, a world alive, yet she felt like an imposter at the fringes, a voice muffled beneath the din. She steeled herself, recalling Victor's words, reminding herself that this was her narrative to convey. She was not merely a participant, she was a storyteller armed with a dish infused with her essence. Yet as she surveyed the rows of culinary experts and critics seated before her, a chill traveled down her spine. She had prepared herself for this moment, but standing under the bright lights, she questioned if the weight of her story would be heavy enough to hold the attention of an audience molded by high expectations and polished skills. Claire inhaled deeply, the warmth of spices lingering on her tongue, a metaphor for her determination. This was her moment. The time had come to face not only the judges, but the fears and doubts that had long held her back. "We'll see how your story translates into flavor," she muttered under her breath as she prepared to take the stage. But before she could step into the spotlight, she caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, the one person she had dreaded seeing most, the very person whose judgment had falsely defined her worth in the industry. With her heart racing, the specter of the past loomed large. She realized then that this showcase represented more than just her culinary ambitions. It embodied her journey of confronting the ghost that had haunted her. As she stood poised at the threshold, the embrace of vulnerability beckoned her forward. But could she truly confront this demon and reclaim her narrative within the space of a single dish? In that moment, Claire recognized that the stakes were higher than ever, not just for the judges, but for herself. She took a step into the light, her hands trembling, but her resolve solidifying. What truths would unfold in the heated pressure of the showcase? And could she silence the doubts that threatened to overwhelm her? As Claire stepped into the limelight, the weight of the moment swept over her like a wave. But deep within, the embers of determination flared brightly. The vibrant energy of the showcase pulsed around her, echoing the rhythm of her heart as she approached the judges' table. They watched her, expressions a mosaic of curiosity and skepticism. Today was not just another cooking competition. It was a proving ground for her identity and artistry. Each step whispered a mantra she had written in her journal. "You have a voice." With every inhale, she focused not only on the dish she had painstakingly crafted, but on the story woven within it, a narrative that connected past with present. As she began her presentation, Claire allowed her confidence to build. "Today, I present a dish that pays homage to my roots while welcoming innovation," she announced, each word flowing with a depth of meaning. Her breath steadied, and slowly vulnerability morphed into strength. "It's a fusion of my grandmother's beloved recipe and modern techniques that honor the traditions but also acknowledge the future." Waving her hand over her carefully plated creation, the colors vibrant, the aromas rich, she felt lighter. With the guiding whispers of those who had believed in her lingering in her mind, she lifted the lid of her dish and released a steaming wave of fragrance that captured the attention of the entire room. As she articulated her inspiration, recounting fond memories of family gatherings, the warmth of shared meals, laughter echoing between bites, she felt a connection growing to her audience. The once rigid, skeptical expressions softened, intrigued by her passion. But the specter of doubt still danced at the edge of her consciousness. She could almost feel Victor's gaze, steady and reassuring. He believed in her implicitly, encouraging her to lean into the moment. Regardless of the judge's customary harshness, she had nothing to lose. She conquered her doubt with each resonant phrase she spoke, owning her journey with authentic clarity. Every flavor on this plate represents more than an ingredient. It represents love, struggle, and growth, Claire continued, conviction ringing in her voice. She explained the nutrition-rich spices, the textures, the meticulously balanced temperatures. She infused her words with the curves of her journey as a chef, reclaiming pieces that had once been weaponized against her. Every moment was not merely preparation, it was catharsis. The judges leaned in, some nodding, some taking notes. Claire felt a spark ignite in her. She had shown them, not just her talent, but her soul. Finally, it was time for them to taste. As the first judge lifted the fork, her heartbeat synchronized with the movement. Were they ready to embrace her story? She could see the gears turning in their minds as they savored each bite, the silence now thick with significance. As they communicated back and forth, glances exchanged, she braced herself for the verdict. "Fresh," murmured one judge, "bold and layered like your narrative." "This is culinary art at its finest," another added, their voice unwavering. "It resonates deeply. I can feel the connection with each bite. It's narrative and flavor intertwined." The weight of her anxiety unraveled slowly, each word acting as a release valve for her fears. She had shown them who she was, not merely a waitress turned chef, but a creator who molded experiences into a dish that was unapologetically hers. With every compliment, praise wrapped around her like a warm embrace. Suddenly, the ghost that had haunted her began to dissolve. Claire left the showcase not just with compliments, but with a newfound clarity about her path, both in cooking and in life. Later that evening, as she walked out of the venue, buzzing with energy and relief, she received a notification. Her opportunity to ultimately conquer self-doubt had been witnessed by many, leading to significant interest. People recognized not only her culinary prowess, but also her undeniable story. In the following days, a series of offers streamed in, each highlighting not just the food she had created, but the journey interwoven with her growth as a chef. Schools reached out wanting her to share her experiences. Local businesses extended deals for collaborations, and invitations to culinary showcases flooded her inbox. Claire had emerged not only as a chef, but as an inspiration, a representation of fortitude and reinvention. The once timid waitress was forging a new identity marked by pride, dedication, and resilience. Embracing her journey ignited a passion to teach others, sharing her struggles and cooking techniques to inspire aspiring chefs to chase their narrative despite the judgment they might face. In the kitchen of Rosie's Diner, her pulse danced with a newfound rhythm of confidence. As she created new dishes, she reflected on the transformation. The laughter of customers now echoed her journey, resonating with a strength that had carried her from doubt to authentic self-ownership. Claire was no longer merely a part of the culinary landscape. She was shaping it, becoming a beacon of hope for others who dared to weave their stories into their art. This was only the beginning, and as the sun set over the diner, her culinary future shimmered a vibrant hue of possibility. Now, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that empower personal growth. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support more transformative journeys. Comment your reactions and theories about Claire's incredible journey. Let's start a conversation. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion so we can spread the inspiration far and wide. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.